Consider this. The human brain, a 3-pound organ, might be attuned to dimensions beyond the 3-dimensional world we inhabit. Yes, that sounds borderline impossible, but a few research teams around the globe are edging closer to confirming that consciousness itself might extend into realms we traditionally label as metaphysical. Studies like the one by neuroscientist Carl Prebram in the 1990s proposed the holographic model of the brain, suggesting a complex interplay of wave interference patterns that could theoretically overlap with hidden layers of reality. Hey, if that's not shocking enough, recent investigations into meditation by Dr. Joe Dispenza have pointed out measurable shifts in brain activity, hinting at heightened awareness states. Right here, we stand at the intersection of the mainstream and the mysterious. Before we get carried away, let's be clear, we are not about to fling ourselves into pure speculation. Rather, we'll explore peer-reviewed experiments, recognized scientific theories, and respected expert opinions. We'll see how certain neurological states, like the theta and gamma brainwave patterns triggered by deep meditation, correlate with phenomena that some have interpreted as glimpses into other dimensions. We'll also examine how some researchers interpret the bizarre encounters people describe under the influence of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, the potent psychedelic famously studied by Dr. Rick Strassman. Could these experiences represent transient contact with interdimensional entities? Or are they purely hallucinatory illusions produced by our neural pathways? Strap in. We're about to peel back the layers of a reality that might be far more vast than we ever dared imagine. We perceive the world through 5 senses, each one filtering specific types of data. Our eyes pick up the visible light spectrum, our ears detect certain frequencies of sound, and so on. But cognitive science has pointed out something vital. Our senses barely scratch the surface of reality. Electromagnetic waves, quantum phenomena, and sub- or ultrasonic frequencies exist all around us, yet the human brain is typically blind to them. The question is, could it be that we also have limited access, like a locked door, to other concealed dimensions? Fascinating experiments show that the way we process reality is shaped by our neuronal architecture. According to a 2016 study published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the brain constructs a common-sense world from incomplete information. But the possibility remains that we might tune into additional dimensional data under certain conditions. Meditation, for instance, modulates neural oscillations and can expand our sensory threshold. Seasoned meditators exhibit unusual patterns of alpha, theta, and gamma waves in functional MRI scans, as shown by research from the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Center for Healthy Minds. Are these unconventional neural patterns simply another state of rest and focus, or do they open the mind to deeper, more exotic layers of existence? The gap between what we know and what we sense has led many to suspect that perhaps we just need the right mental receiver to detect data from overlapping realities. The very fact that we can widen our perceptual range begs the obvious question: how much is still hidden from us? Time to confront something that defies everyday logic. In a well-known study conducted in the 1990s, Dr. Rick Strassman administered DMT, often called the spirit molecule, to volunteers in a controlled clinical setting. The curious part? A considerable share of participants reported encounters with entities that felt vivid, purposeful, and intelligent. If these experiences were purely hallucinations, one might expect random or personal dreamlike sequences. Instead, the recurring patterns and consistent narratives among volunteers raised eyebrows. This phenomenon has led researchers like Andrew Gallimore, a computational neurobiologist, to hypothesize that DMT might temporarily shift the brain's ability to process otherwise inaccessible dimensional data. Intriguing as this claim sounds, it remains contested. Mainstream neuroscience generally asserts that DMT merely scrambles the brain's pattern recognition systems, generating illusions that feel real. Yet the recurring nature of the so-called machine elves or entity encounters remains a puzzle. Is there an undiscovered function allowing our brains under specific neurochemical states to tap into parallel channels of information? To keep things grounded, many experts stress the importance of controlled replication. Are we sure these experiences are universal and not shaped by cultural priming? How might we parse out the difference between other dimensions and the deeper recesses of our own consciousness? What remains certain is that DMT experiences are rich, structured, and for the user, extraordinarily real. This pattern interrupts our usual scientific frameworks and leaves the door ajar for bolder interpretations. Could it be that what we call aliens or extraterrestrials are, in some sense, interdimensional beings contactable through altered states? For centuries, spiritual traditions from Tibetan Buddhism to the Amazonian shamanic lineages have spoken of hidden realms and invisible beings. Before we write those off as folklore, consider that many of these cultures developed sophisticated meditative and ritual practices for systematically altering consciousness. The famed Tibetan Book of the Dead described transitional states that modern researchers might parallel with neurological changes during near-death experiences. Meanwhile, shamans in the Amazon use ayahuasca, a brew containing DMT, to contact spirit guides or helpers, described as powerful extra-physical intelligences. The emotional resonance comes from humanity's enduring search for something beyond the immediate world of the five senses. Slurring anthropological studies, like those documented by Jeremy Narby in The Cosmic Serpent, illustrate how indigenous practitioners interpret these experiences not as fantasies, but as direct communication with other aspects of reality. It provides a heartfelt link across time. People from entirely different epochs and continents echo similar themes of multi-layered realities. Could ancient spiritual knowledge converge with modern neuroscience if we had the right interpretative lens? Our emotional anchor here is a universal human longing to span the gap between the tangible and the transcendent. Advances in brain imaging and wave analysis are allowing us to reevaluate these historical practices. While technology might label them as altered states, they could point the way to realms that have existed alongside us all along. Today, a new generation of researchers is combining ancient insights with advanced neurophysiological measurements, aiming to fully map what the brain might be capable of perceiving. If our senses filter reality, then brainwaves might be the knobs we use to tune those filters. Research from MIT and Harvard has shown that distinctive bands like alpha, 8.46 echoes, theta at 30 plus echoes, reflect different cognitive and perceptual states. During deep meditation, alpha and theta waves often dominate, associated with relaxation, introspection, and heightened internal imagery. Meanwhile, gamma wave spikes can appear during moments of intense focus or the so-called eureka insights. What if these changes in brainwave dominance function like shifting a radio dial? Just as a radio tunes into different frequency channels, the human brain might have a built-in potential to tune in to otherwise inaccessible data streams. Certain individuals also display an uncanny knack for maintaining alpha-theta coherence over extended periods, raising the possibility that these neural states let them experience strange phenomena, like feeling oneness with their surroundings. A 2012 study from the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences found that long-term meditators could voluntarily modulate their gamma waves in real time, suggesting that with enough practice, we might consciously step across thresholds that blur the lines between our internal constructs and external reality. This is not to say we have definitive proof of multidimensional perception, but the notion that the brain's wave states might correspond to portals for advanced cognition or other layers of reality is no longer the realm of purely speculative talk. Instead, it's an emerging field of study, bridging neuroscience, psychology, and even quantum theory. Part of what makes the notion of multidimensional consciousness feel less out there these days is the convergence of multiple scientific disciplines. Neuroscience is unveiling how plastic and dynamic our brain states can be. Quantum physics is revealing that our reality may be far more complex than classical physics presumed. And advanced imaging technology is providing never-before-seen glimpses into how the mind processes extraordinary experiences. Physicists like Dr. Lisa Randall at Harvard proposed the possibility of extra dimensions to explain phenomena such as gravity's relative weakness. Could our brains, under certain neurochemical or wave-based states, be brushing up against these dimensions in a way we don't fully understand? While mainstream science requires rigorous double-blind experiments and reproducible results, the seeds of interdisciplinary research are being planted. Universities are slowly opening up to the idea of funding carefully designed studies on phenomena like extended consciousness or telepathy. Although these remain controversial within academic circles, the shift from immediate dismissal to cautious inquiry is telling. Pair that with increased public curiosity fueled by thousands of anecdotal accounts ranging from mystical experiences and silent retreats to the bizarre encounters reported on high-dose psychedelics, and we have a potent recipe for momentum. So, once considered completely anecdotal, subjective experiences are being systematically investigated with state-of-the-art instruments that measure everything from heart rate variability to advanced EEG frequency analytics, bridging the gap between the intangible and the scientifically observable. Meditation has come a long way from being considered a mystical or strictly spiritual practice. Large-scale studies, like those conducted at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital, have documented the physiological and neurological impacts of disciplined mindfulness. These investigations show reduced stress markers, better emotional regulation, and more robust neural connectivity in certain regions linked to introspection and empathy. But here's where it takes a leap into the unknown. Advanced practitioners occasionally describe phenomena that defy conventional explanation. They speak of encountering light realms, perceiving celestial sounds, or feeling intimately connected with a broader cosmic intelligence. Researchers typically chalk these up to subjective, though meaningful mental states. However, some EEG and fMRI findings reveal unusual synchronization across different cortical areas that we barely understand. Furthermore, these states can sometimes be correlated with subtle shifts in electromagnetic signatures around the body, as observed in limited pilot studies. Could these shifts represent ephemeral glimpses into higher dimensional fields? It's not conclusive. Yet the repeated correlation between intense meditative states and experiences that mirror transpersonal or otherworldly contact is intriguing. By refining these studies, controlling for cultural bias and top-down suggestion, and expanding sample sizes, we might eventually gather enough evidence to see if the meditating mind is truly extending beyond itself. For now, the sum total of data points to a mind far more capable than we once believed, potentially bridging classical notions of reality with intangible frontiers. When we talk about aliens, popular imagination often conjures physical spacecraft and extraterrestrial visitors from galaxies far away. But what if the phenomenon is more about overlapping realities than distant cosmic addresses? This angle has been considered by numerous theorists, including Jacques Vallée, who proposed that UFO encounters might represent a sort of control system or interdimensional interaction rather than straightforward space travel. Contemplate the anecdotal overlap between certain alien abduction narratives and experiences described by individuals in deep meditation or under the influence of potent psychedelics like DMT. Both sometimes mention telepathic communication, fluid manipulations of space-time, and ominous yet awe-inspiring presences. Some experiences even feature buzzing or droning sounds reminiscent of bee-like or hive-like patterns in alien entity reports. We should remain critical. Correlation does not equal causation, and the power of suggestion in shaping subjective experiences is immense. Yet the question lingers, Are these accounts simply manifestations of collective archetypes that unconsciously bubble up under altered conditions? Or do they point to real contact with intelligence from an unseen domain? The idea that so-called aliens might be interdimensional is not new, but modern neuroscience and consciousness studies give it fresh angles. By mapping brain states that correlate with perceived contact events, we may discover whether our neurological wiring can interface with beings, energies, or segments of reality that exist in parallel with our known universe. Intriguing and also quite unsettling. Here's where these ideas could lead us: a greater contextual understanding of the so-called multiverse. Physicists like Dr. Max Tegmark at MIT have argued for the existence of parallel universes based on mathematical inevitabilities. If such universes do exist, it's plausible they occupy the same space in ways beyond normal three-dimensional comprehension. The question then arises, can the brain, under specific conditions, catch glimpses of these alternate realities? In theory, if the universe is more akin to a grand superposition of possibility waves, an idea supported by certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, then maybe consciousness is the key that collapses or illuminates certain aspects. People who have encountered bizarre beings during near-death experiences or deep meditation might be tapping into these alternate or parallel streams. Where one sees aliens, another sees divine figures, perhaps based on cultural frameworks. Teasing out the link between quantum events and consciousness has been notoriously difficult for the scientific community, yet the continued push in quantum biology, exploring phenomena like quantum coherence in photosynthesis or avian navigation, hints that living systems may indeed harness certain quantum properties. Could our brains do the same, thereby enabling multiverse glimpses under extraordinary circumstances? It sounds too wild for mainstream acceptance right now, but it's on the fringe of the frontier, neither conclusively discredited nor neatly proven, and that is precisely where the next wave of research might reside. Before we get lost in overly grand theories, let's remember that science demands measurable data and intellectual rigor. In these uncharted waters, there's a profound need for skepticism. Researchers are finding that the presence of strong electromagnetic fields can disrupt or enhance certain mental states, as observed in the controversial God Helmet experiments by Michael Persinger. Participants sometimes reported mystical experiences when mild electromagnetic signals were applied to specific brain regions. Could these manipulations simulate or even facilitate so-called interdimensional perception? Or are they just illusions of the mind? The truth might lie somewhere in between. If artificially introduced electromagnetic fields can evoke experiences akin to spiritual or otherworldly encounters, it prompts us to question the reliability of any subjective testimony, even from deep meditation or DMT trips. Are we seeing real glimpses into hidden dimensions or just field-induced illusions? This pattern interrupt reminds us the conversation around extra dimensions, alien entities, or advanced consciousness must consistently return to reproducible facts. Our excitement over expansions of the mind should be tempered by disciplined experimental design. Any persistent anomalies that survive rigorous testing could become the bedrock for a new scientific paradigm. Until then, caution is the hallmark of genuine exploration. Behind the specialized research papers and complicated theories about consciousness, there's a shared human pursuit for understanding. Throughout history, we've drawn cave paintings, built megalithic structures aligned to celestial events, and developed complex mythologies that speak to realms beyond the everyday. Whether we interpret these realms as the afterlife, parallel dimensions, or worlds inhabited by intangible beings, the theme unites us across time and culture. It's not only about gleaning scientific facts, it's about fueling our collective imagination and sense of wonder. Why do people often describe feelings of profound awe or reverence when tapping into these deeper states? Perhaps, from an evolutionary standpoint, these states served as catalysts for creativity, empathy, and community bonding. Or maybe they offered glimpses into a broader cosmic tapestry that gave our ancestors purpose. Thus, modern science, with its precision tools and rigorous methods, is adding a new layer to this ancient conversation. We're seeing that reality might be more immense than we once thought, and the human brain is equipped with latent capacities we're only beginning to appreciate. Whether you approach these questions from a scientific or spiritual perspective, know this: you stand in a long line of explorers who dared to wonder what lies beyond the horizon. As we near our conclusion, let's consider how these threads of inquiry all converge into a singular, astonishing landscape. So, where do we go from here? The science is still unfolding. But each study on meditation's capacity to alter brainwave patterns, every peer-reviewed paper on the mysteries of DMT, and every mental frontier we cross raises another question. Are we truly just physical organisms in a 3D world, or could we be multi-dimensional explorers in disguise? The next steps are ours to take. Seek out reputable sources like the peer-reviewed research published in respected journals, investigate new mindfulness or meditation techniques, and keep informed about emerging scientific insights into consciousness. If you're feeling bold, explore how your own mental practices, like extended meditation or breath work, affect your perception. Share your experiences and ask critical questions. Do they align with mainstream understandings, or do they hint at something deeper? The only way to push the boundaries of knowledge is through a collective effort of curiosity and open, evidence-based discourse. Now the floor is yours. Leave your comments with any insights, studies, or critical takes. Could interdimensional experiences under DMT or deep meditation be genuine glimpses into alien territories, or is it all an elaborate trick of the brain? Feel free to join the conversation, share real sources, and challenge the status quo, because our understanding of the cosmos and the mind might just be in its earliest chapters. We stand at the doorway of possibility. The question is, are you ready to step through?